Good afternoon, comrades and relatives. Sigitamu Turtle Island. Welcome to our very special Red Valentine's live stream. We have some awesome guests today. We have another guest on the way. I will be the host for today's show, Justine Teba. I'm calling in from the Pueblo of Acoma, and I am here with some awesome guests right now. If I could get a round of introductions, let's start with Melanie, Elena, and then Jana.
Hi, everyone. This is Melanie Yazzie, co-host of Red Power Hour. I know Elena and I have been gone for a beat, but it's really nice to be back here on Valentine's Day, the day when Captain Cook was taken out by our Kanakamali relatives. Yeah, really nice to be here. Happy to see everyone. Excited to answer questions for folks who are joining us live. I'll pass it on to Elena.
Thank you, Tamu. I'm Elena Ortiz. I'm calling in from Ogapoge Owinge, otherwise known as Mordor, otherwise known as Santa Fe. And yes, glad to see everybody. Happy assassination of Captain Cook Day, and blessings and shout out to all our Kanakamali relatives. Super excited to be here. Jana.
Kamatakiapi, I'm Jana Schmieding. An actor, writer. I'm calling in from Tongvaland or Los Angeles, California, with my cat Wilma. She never misses a Zoom. This is my decolonial kitty, one of them. And yeah, I'm just so happy to be here. I'm a big fan of Red Nation, and I'm a longtime follower. This is not my first time caller, but I love the work y'all do, and so I'm so excited to spend Captain Cook killing day with y'all.
Awesome. And thank you so much for coming to the show. We're really excited. We have a loose agenda going on. I think that we can take this conversation anywhere we would like to. But of course, thank y'all so much for doing the work of acknowledging our Kanaka Malay resistance by killing Captain Cook. I actually watched a video of Hanani K. Trask. She was like, the best thing about Captain Cook was that we killed him. and
Cook is, horrible because he brought disease. He's not terribly important. The best thing about him is that we killed him. We have great mana throughout the Pacific. All the places where Cook went, took his diseases to the Maoris, to the Tahitians, whatever, we can say, we Hawaiians took care of this problem here. We killed Cook.
The other thing is they're always, when the West and Western historians characterize the death of Cook, it was always a cultural misunderstanding. And I agree with that. It was Cook's misunderstanding of what the Hawaiians would do if they tried to take colonial Pu'u hostage. He miscalculated that the Hawaiians would run away from colonial Pu'u because they would be afraid of white men and their white guns. And he was wrong, because the Hawaiians surrounded their chief to protect him. And who ran away? Cook's men ran away from Cook.
And poor Cook couldn't swim.
Like a dodo could not swim.
Like most British sailors.
That's right, exactly. So he gets killed because he, in fact, miscalculated. He projected onto the Hawaiian Maka'ainana, the men who surrounded the king, the same cowardice that his own men. So obviously, for all of history and for the good thing of having Cook killed, showed, which is that they ran away from Cook, he couldn't swim, he gets killed, and colonial Pu'u survives.
And also, what I found out, thanks to Water Protector Legal Collective, February 14th, 1655 is also the Mapuche Uprising, where they were up against the Spanish colonial rule in Chile, and they ousted them too. So, awesome radical history going on. So yeah, thank you everyone who's tuning in to the live stream. Before we get into it, I also want to let people know if they would like to support our work and to support the show. We have our GoFundMe, and we also have our Patreon going on. For our Patreon subscribers, we have some questions that we submitted that I hope we can get to. But if you would like to support our work and if you would like to continue to see our live streaming, please support the show. And we'll put those links in the comments and any of the descriptions where this video will be posted. Yeah, so before we get into the mushy ooey gooey stuff of Valentine's Day, I actually would like to acknowledge we have a podcast episode that came out about a year ago called Romantic Love is a Weapon of Capitalism with comrades from the Red Nation. And I gave it a listen again, and it really just centered me on this whole holiday. Sometimes I do get caught up in the like romantic love and stuff, but it really grounded me and reminded me of anti-colonial love, decolonial love, and also with the history of our Hawaiian and Mapuche relatives and their radical history. It really shows us that love is also a form of resistance, and love is something that can be anti-colonial and decolonial, and that acts of decolonization are actually acts of love. So I was wondering, maybe we can start the show off with this question. What are some examples of love as resistance in indigenous culture and movements? And or how are you showing love for the people? Whoever would like to go first.
I'll go first. I'm part of a, you know, very diverse. I've always sort of been part of a very diverse community of Indigenous people. I grew up off my tribal homelands in Oregon, and I grew up around a lot of folks who had, whose families had left their reservations in the Midwest, um, and who also were. I grew up around a lot of Oregon tribes and folks from Northern California tribes, so I had a lot of Warm Springs homies and um, Calpuya homies, and but also you know, like Hoopa folks and Yurok folks. And but now living in Los Angeles, it's kind of a similar situation. There's urban natives here, but I feel like the intertribal nature of our community here in Los Angeles that has really been sort of brought together through the entertainment industry largely is really starting to represent a really interesting we are able to bring all of our like organizing skills together that make us better at our jobs, but also like, recently there have been the LA fires, which is some of the worst urban wildfires that we've seen here in LA. And it affected a lot of a lot of people in our industry, but also just a lot of community members in Los Angeles. Historically Black neighborhood, Altadena, almost completely burned down. A lot of working class Black folks in LA that had, set up families and communities there. Their lives have been completely changed and, demolished by these urban wildfires. So a few of us got together in the Native uh, comedy community, and we set up um, a mutual aid effort. And we got all of our, we got Uncle Zon McLarnon involved. We got Steve Paul Judd involved. We got, Native people in entertainment far and wide, and our allies. We got people like Dustin Milligan, who I worked with on Rutherford Falls, and also Ed Helms, who I worked with on Rutherford Falls, to raise money, offering like, I'll write you a funny song, or, Zon was like a signed Dark Winds jacket or something, just like to raise money. We auctioned it off basically online. And so I had my sister fly in from Texas to help make a big fry bread feed. And so we made a bunch of Indian tacos for the folks here in LA, and we got together. We had a comedy show, and we basically plugged this fundraiser that we're launching, and we did that in a week. We just like got our resources together and reached out to everybody, and everyone was so willing to pitch in. And we fed the people, and then we said, hey, spread the word. We're raising money for the people here in LA. Like, this is how we community build, and this is how we sustain community, and this is how we survive. This is how we survive capitalism. This is how we survive this, the downfall of capitalism, which is what we're experiencing now. And like, I just really feel strongly that we as Indigenous people have such like built into our family systems and built into sort of our like genetic structure, this ability to organize each other and organize around survival and organize also around joy, and like bringing laughter to people is like super important, especially when times get hella dark like they are right now. It's like being able to bring people together around laughter so that we can manage this ongoing struggle, and be, you know, in unity together, regardless of political differences, regardless of, you know, our different values, what have you. Everybody came together. We raised close to $16,000 in a week's time. And it was just like, it just made me remember that like love is like collective survival, and like that joy is still a really important part of resistance, and joy is like the thing that like binds us together. And like humor and laughter and our ability to like, you know, our ability to use our humor to bring down these systems of injustice is like it's really important. But yeah, also just like making sure that we're doing whatever we can to protect the vulnerable people in our own communities, native or non-native, that we are like in this working class struggle together, and we can organize, and it's really not that hard. It just takes like a few dedicated folks to like sort of push it through. So yeah.
Amazing. Thank you, Jana. Yeah, I was listening to your podcast and I heard you talking about some of the work you're doing out there. It was really good to hear those kind of updates. Melanie or Elena, who wants to answer first?
I can go. Or Melanie, you want to go?
No, go ahead.
I just wanted to say, jump sort of off of what Jana was saying, and because Melanie and I had this conversation on a podcast a while ago. I don't remember which one, but we were talking about hope, and hope is revolutionary. It's really tough right now to exist in this world, and we're watching sort of the extinction burst of capitalism and of the American empire, and it's scary. It's like watching a volcano explode, and you're not sure if it's going to come and burn you, but you know it's going to burn somewhere, and you have to be prepared for it. And so I think it's really devastating what's going on with our LGBTQ two-spirit relatives, worrying about our trans relatives, worrying about working class people, of course, who are losing their jobs left and right. And when Justine sent out the questions for us to ponder, I thought about what is love. And like Jana, I think it's caring for, watching out for, being in community with, but also finding the joy and finding the hope. Because if we're not finding hope, then we're not really being revolutionary. I mean, we have to believe, we have to have faith, and not the kind of faith that comes on Sundays in a church, but the kind of faith that our ancestors had in order to get us this far, in this colonized world. It's important to find the joy. It's important to laugh. And that's why I'm really grateful to Jana and all the work that you do. Thank you for being out there and for making us laugh. And I have to ask you, is your cat named after Wilma Mankiller?
She's actually not. She's named after one of my grandmas.
Oh,
My aunties.
that's great. I mean, it's important for us to find joy within the struggle, and to me, that's love. Like that's that's love, and it's important, and we need to keep doing it, and we need to be making each other laugh and holding each other up as we go through this, because we never know, what's going to happen next.
So, can I just hop in, Justine? Before I say anything, Elena, can I talk about your shirt for a second? I'm sorry. I know we're like answering a serious question right now, but holy shit, is that entire shirt made out of a Sani scarf? Dang. And even has like the buttons, like the nice silver. Who made that fabulous shirt?
I think it was Melanie. It was one of your relatives. It was Danae. So yeah, very
Naturally.
awesome. I wanted like 14 of them, but I A, couldn't afford them, and B, they didn't have that many. So very cool.
Well, that's the perfect it's like it's pretty fabulous. As soon as you got on, I was like, is that a Hawaiian shirt? Like in honor of like Captain Cook Death Day? But then I looked closer and I was like, oh my gosh. Anyway, so there's that. I had to point that out because it's so fabulous. But the question is about like love as resistance, but I usually think about it the other way around, a resistance as love. I'm like 43. I'm anti-status, right? I was recently called middle-aged by some little shit teenager. And that's fine. That's fine because I am. But the reason why I'm outing my age and like where I'm at in my life, I don't really think much or care much anymore about individual love. Like that used to consume every waking hour for me when I was young, when I was like a teenager and in my 20s. I'm like, why doesn't anyone love me? And like, why do I always have shitty relationships? And it's pretty much just men, like heteropatriarchy. But these days I think it's also because of my experience organizing in the Red Nation and like what you said earlier, Jana, that love is collective survival. Uh I really only think about love in the register of like the collective now. And that's just where it's so natural for me at this point that whenever I think about love, that's always where I go first. And again, I think that might be a consequence of my age and my experience, but definitely because it's basically impossible for me at this point to think about love in any kind of non-political or apolitical way. And so I just feel like there's just so much remarkable love, love that like changes history. Like I was thinking, because we're approaching, Leonard Peltier is getting released in 4 days from prison, from being in prison for over 50 years, and the amount of love that was required for 50 years. I mean, I was listening to Rachel Thunder during the live stream that we did a few weeks ago when his clemency was announced, and she was like, the reason why this is happening is because our people never gave up. Like for 50 years, even when it seemed impossible, like we never gave up. And 50 years of love, many people who we will never even know their names, right? Putting that kind of like love into just one person, one of our relatives, right? Freeing them from from being incarcerated by the violent settler state. That is such a remarkable love story, I guess. It's a remarkable love story, and it's a love story that includes like thousands and thousands of indigenous but also non-indigenous people. And I don't know, like Wounded Knee Day is coming up on February 27th, February 28th, right? February is a big day or a big month for indigenous love. And I mean, Wounded Knee may be narrated within like settler pop culture is like when Indians go rogue and like all of these crazy things, but that's also I think a profound act of love because I don't think you can separate love from liberation when you think about it. I think in the context of the collective, and I teach a lot about Standing Rock too with my students, and I just remember like the thousands and thousands of people who quit their jobs and like sobered up and brought their kids and their whole families, and they stayed at that camp for months and months, and that was out of love for the water. It wasn't necessarily out of love for each other. I've said this before, wasn't necessarily like human to human love, because most of the time when people think about love, they just think of it's a very human centric concept. It's hyper individualized, but it's also human centric, and that's just so limiting and silly. I think indigenous people teach us that love is like super expansive, and interspecies. It's fucking interdimensional. Let's be honest. Like, we have love for, I don't know, all of the beings that we conjure in our ceremonies to help us heal. We have love for our ancestors, and our ancestors have love for us. Like, the land and the water has love for us. And so I don't know, like, if you understand that you have love all around you, then like that's kind of all you need. And I guess that when we use the word resistance, it also, there's a connotation to it that seems to be very specific. Like, there are specific, like, to be a good, like an activist, like there's like this list of things or these qualifications that you have to have. But I think from what I've learned in movements, from an Indigenous perspective, is that love is just all around you, and like that's why we do what we do every single day, even in the face of catastrophe. That love is, what am I trying to say? That love is undeniable. And so I never despair about the future because of that. Does that make sense? And because I see it every day, and I see it in the fact that our people still speak their language. When I see like all of us having babies, and like the laughter too, like what y'all are talking about, to laugh, like to laugh in the face of genocide, forget it. we got this, I guess is what I'm saying. And I know folks are despairing right now, and I understand that, but I don't know. I'm like a long game, kind of like thousands of years in long game kind of thinker. And I think Indigenous people in general are. And that's just because, I don't know, we know what love feels like because we're surrounded by it. That's basically creation, for lack of a better term. But that's what I think of when I think about love.
Thank you, Melanie. It's like Interstellar. Love expands 7 generations.
Yeah, but like without a white guy at the center of that story.
Yeah, exactly.
Wait, Interstellar was the one with Matthew McConaughey, right?
Yeah, and I did not love that movie, so.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of his either, particularly.
Wait, what? Okay,
Well,
sorry, Justine. What did you not like about that movie, Jana?
You know what? That movie terrified me. I felt scared of it. And I think it's because of the, I don't know, man, it tripped me out in a way that I was like, I think it was the time element that, like, being in, like, how they were like, that time is different, the relativity of time. My brain was just a little bit scrambled watching it, and I was like, I'm not having a good time watching this. Mama needs a break. So yeah, I just didn't love it.
yeah, no, especially the fact that Interstellar is based on like the ultimate like settler goal is to like destroy the earth and then leave. But yeah, no,
White guys
but
with giant phallic symbols shooting into space, like penetrating space. Sorry, it's a rape analogy.
well, if there is one man in the world I do like, it's this guy.
That was perfect timing.
Yeah,
I wish I had a button.
That's
Dang it.
such a great introduction. Like the conversation the comments leading right into my introduction. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. Can y'all hear me? I'm having issues with my Wi-Fi.
Oh man, he's late and his signal sucks.
Yeah, I don't love my Wi-Fi.
Oh,
It's okay. We don't need to hear you, man.
You don't. Honestly, you don't.
We're rugged like that. It's very with the vibe. But thanks for coming on the show, Dallas. I maybe since you're jumping in just now, maybe you could do like a introduction for our listeners, and then we're actually at the end of our rotation for our first question, which was what are examples of love as resistance in Indigenous culture of movements, or how are you showing love for the people? So if you want to take care of those two, we can do that and get you in the show.
Sweet. I cut out. Is that for me or is that for somebody else? It cut out. It's cut out on my end. I'm sorry.
Oh no!
Yeah, I
Can you
can.
see us or
Yeah,
hear us?
I can. You know what? Just move on without me. Just move on
Okay,
without
did
me.
you hear
It's
Well,
anything I
the
okay.
man
said?
comes in and just completely destroys the vibe.
I know. Just move on without me.
Thanks, Dallas.
Forget me. I'm done. I'm cooked here.
Oh man. You know, I had a really good question for Dallas too. I was gonna ask him how he felt about being the runner-up for Indian country's sexiest man alive by Indigenous TV. But hey, we'll wait till we get service. Hopefully that Denny's Wi-Fi picks up a little bit.
Exactly. Are you at the Denny's, bro, or is it a Perkins?
Oh yeah, it's probably a Perkins, right? For our Lakota folks.
It looked like it may be a bus as well. Just saying.
Okay, yeah, maybe he's on the Greyhound. Well, the next question I had was tell us a resi rugged love story you know. And I can start this one because I did bring some pictures to talk about this. And I know we're trying to decenter romantic love, but I just have to really like give it up for the Tebas on this one because my grandparents have been together for several decades. We celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary 2 years ago. And I just want to say, man, that's a resi rugged love story because they met at an Indian boarding school, and these are some pictures of them, and I feel like, especially for like the Pueblo people of northern New Mexico, everybody has grandparents who went to the St. Kate's boarding school, and yeah, and then this is them on their 50th wedding anniversary. I was gonna say it's either me talking about that or me talking about the first time that I saw two res puppies stuck together, which was very I didn't know what was happening, but I knew it was wrong. I don't know about wrong, but I knew it was uncomfortable. I was in Santa Clara Pueblo, young child, and right outside my great grandma's house. So if we could get y'all to tell me about what resi rugged love story you know.
I mean, I off the top of my head, there are so many. There are so many, but I'll just say my parents. My parents met at a rugged Indian bar in Flagstaff, which is on the corner of Route 66 and oh shit, what's that downtown street? There's like a very bougie pottery store there now. That used to be a rugged Indian bar. And yep, my dad was in there. He was drinking. My mom, she came in with a friend of hers. My mom is not native. My mom is white, but she was in southern Arizona and she came up with some like Wallapai friends of hers because she was doing activism down there. My mom is a longtime organizer. I think she was working with the United Farm Workers actually on some campaigns in southern Arizona. And they cruised up to Flagstaff. And so they're Indians, right? Like her friends. And so they're like, let's go to this bar because it was known for, because Flagstaff is a border town, right? And so there like aren't always a lot of spaces where Native people are welcome, especially places that serve alcohol. So my mom went in there and I guess she just like, she saw my dad sitting alone. She liked that he was alone because she said a lot of men were just like all up in her business, bothering her. She liked that my dad just didn't give a shit. He was just sitting there minding his own business. So I guess she walked up to him. She introduced herself and the rest is history, I guess. But yeah, even the way she got there, I think she was like, they ran out of gas on their way to Flagstaff. So they had to like, I don't know what they did to get the money. And so then they were there. And then my parents, like my mom had this VW bus. This, by the way, is like the 70s. This is like the mid 70s, mid late 70s when this happened. My mom had this like old VW bus and my parents, I guess, went out into Coconino National Forest, which is like around Flag. And they spent the first like week together, like cruising around in the forest in my mom's VW bus. So it's like the very 70s. But yeah. So it's not like super resi, but it's a border town.
I'm just imagining her walking up to him in her jean jacket and her jeans and with some like nice like 70s auntie hair, some heart playing in the background.
Wait,
Love that, Melanie.
isn't Heart from like the 80s?
I don't know. To me,
love
I'm
Heart,
like the
by the way.
60s, 70s, and 80s are all the same decade.
Dude, whatever, Justine. You're so much younger than the rest of us. I was born in 1981. They're not the
My
same
bad.
decades.
Okay, yeah, no, sorry.
They are not
They're
the
not
same
the same
decade. They are not.
Wah, wah. Where's I need to add a soundboard to this.
All right, child of the
Wah,
90s.
wah, 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 wah.
All right, if we're talking about parents,
Oh shit.
I got a parent story. I don't know if I like Melanie. I don't know if it's rugged resi rugged, but my parents met. True confessions. My mother was in school back east. My mom is also white from Boston. She was signed up for a summer archaeology class, and they flew all these young people out to Santa Fe to stay at the Santa Fe Indian School for the summer, and they were excavating Juan de Oñate's first camp outside of Okewinge, which is where my dad was from. And my dad was at the University of New Mexico, and he was in anthropology. So the head of the dig sort of tapped him to be in charge of these young people from back east who were doing this archaeology dig. And so my parents met, and the head archaeologist, who actually has a museum named after her, got the young kids together and told them to all, make friends with the Indians so that they could learn all the secrets and then tell her so she could put it in her anthropology book. And my mother, thank goodness, had some ethics and told my dad what they were supposed to do. So my father got all his friends together, and they just made up all these stories. And they told these young students all these made up stories, and they went and told the anthropologist. So there's a lot of great anthropology books about Okewinge that came out that have these fabulous stories, and not a single one of them is true. And my mother never went back. She stayed in New Mexico.
Amazing.
That's a good story.
All right, looks like Dallas got the Greyhound Wi-Fi working.
Check 1 2 1 2 3.
You good? Yeah, we good. You're good.
Am I good? Are you good? I'm good, dude. I totally jinxed it. I just told a guy, total man just came in and fucked it all up for you guys.
Damn it. You kind of interrupted the feminine
Well,
energy.
now it looks like, it looks like you got good enough Wi-Fi now that you can use a beauty filter.
Yeah, I should. Dude, I get so much crap from my friends for using filters. I'm like, dude, what's wrong with using filters every now and then? What's wrong with using filters?
Particularly for those of us who weren't born in 1991, right?
Yeah. I want to say, I was listening earlier. I liked Interstellar as a dad. When she said, because my dad promised me, Niagara Falls. Niagara Falls.
Yeah, but then didn't it fuck you up that when she comes to visit him in the hospital, she's older, she's an old lady, and she's like, hey, Dad, and he's like still young McConaughey? Sucks.
It sucks. And yeah, there's all problems with it all overall, but it just hit the hearts, where and actually the opposite end was really messed up, is that he didn't really care about his son. It was all about his daughter. Like, he's just kind of, his son was like, yeah, Dad, you're a deadbeat, gone, peace out. Anyways, hi everybody, happy to be here. I'm outside the Mall of America right now. America. That's where I'm at. I'm in the heart of contradiction right now. My kids are enjoying their time inside.
Are they at the Nickelodeon theme park?
Oh yeah. Yeah, right now. Yeah. They are.
I'm like 10 miles from you. I'm in St. Paul.
Woo, you're over there.
That's right.
So what was I missed the question. Does it matter? You don't really need me. Really? Do I need to be here?
I mean, thank you for showing up, Dallas. The comments are popping off. They love you. They said classic coyote move. So the people are all right with it, I guess.
Yeah.
Actually, you know what? I did have a question that I asked Dallas. How did it feel being the runner-up for Indigenous TV's sexy Indian country's sexiest man alive?
I would have had it if it wasn't for the damn Navajo vote. That's what did me in. All right. I'm telling you, I didn't court the Navajo vote enough. And because of that, I lost. That just shows you where national politics are. You got to court the Navajo vote.
I mean,
it's a sad state of affairs in Native Indian country. You just got to do a couple more, Yada Laws in there and some Yebiches, and you're good to go.
and we did get a question. They said who was number one. It was this guy right here, Jim. Yep. So this is my second time referencing this thing put out by Indigenous TV on the podcast. I thought it was hilarious.
Can I ask, did you have?
It was hilarious.
Did you apply for it?
No, I didn't apply for it, but I saw the nomination list, and so I was like, I'm just gonna mess around and have fun with it and see what I can do. And I just had fun. I had fun with it. I think it's nice to see just acknowledgement of masculinity in a way like that, where it's kind of lighthearted. Like, let's acknowledge different men, but also I don't want it to go to my head or other folks' head. Like, just just have fun with it and be whatever. I was waiting for Jana's response, and I got it, so it was great on the social medias. I saw Jana post about it. And it was more or less like, all right, whatever, you fucking dudes, whatever. Moving on.
Yeah.
I was waiting for them to do a version for women, and I was like, oh, this isn't gonna go over well at all. The second you put a gender, it's like you can only kind of do that for men because
yeah,
women and women and femme folks already live within that reality. We're just constantly being looked at.
Yeah, I think that there's interesting space in there to have a conversation. Obviously, if all of this is what's the basis, right? What are the metrics being used in this? And so that's, I think, when I was posted on social media, that's what I was kind of going after, is what are the matrix for this? What do you guys what's the assessment here? Who has
and then you started using the beauty filter because it was the metrics are obviously looks, appearance. What are the metrics so that I can win?
I think it was also what Native women find hot, and I gotta say, both of y'all are hilarious.
See, in my mind growing up, I'm like, I have to look like the stoic brother from Last of the Mohicans, because I remember all my aunties and moms thought he's hot. What's not hot is that he died for the white girl, but everything else was that was hot.
Elena and I covered that extensively in our review of Last of the Mohicans. Just saying. We knew.
Oh, okay.
We did.
We knew that all of the Native women listening were in love with Eric Schweig.
And I think that, right. Also, what makes what makes hotness depends on your generation or your age. For me, man, you got to be able to get out there and chop some wood. And Dallas, I'm looking at where you are in the snow. Dude, get out there and chop some wood. That's sexy, right?
Yeah, what are your kids in the mall for? You can't fashion some leather together for their clothing?
Yeah, got no bison skin? What? Come on.
Dog, I'm in Bloomington right now. There's they cut down all the trees here. There's nothing here. There's parking lots.
All right.
I'm outside of Chevy's and IHOP. So I'll work on my tree chopping here in the parking lot.
Okay, so it was an IHOP and not a Denny's Wi-Fi. But anyway.
I'm stealing from the corporate fucking masters here.
All right, so when you joined, we're actually in the middle of our rotation for our question. Tell us a resi rugged love story you know. And Jana, would you like to go first and then Dallas?
Yeah, I think I think I don't know. I guess my grandparents have a pretty resi rugged love story. You know, they they met also at Chemawa Indian School in Oregon, and they were both from they had both of their families had moved to Oregon from South Dakota because of BIA jobs, and they I think the resiest part about it is they got married when they were like 18. They got married right out of high school. And then immediately started popping out 4 kids. My grandfather actually, oh man, when I was like 14 years old, he was like, "You better not get with an Indian man. He's gonna get you pregnant and leave you." So, uh, you know, I'm getting that white dick these days, so and it ain't bad.
Oh man, I'm about to make the switch. I'm this close to making the
Take it
switch,
for a
fam.
ride, Justine. Take it for a ride.
All right, all right. Anyone on live stream, hit me in the DMs. Dallas, do you have tell us?
Jana's our Eric Swayze of Indian country right now. She gonna fall for that white boy.
I am the stoic brother.
Yeah. Yes, you are. If there's nothing else can be said about Jana, she is very stoic and majestic. Rugged. Oh man. I got a friend. I'm not going to name names in this. This is anonymous, right? I'm not naming names, but I have a good friend of mine whose current husband, when she first introduced him to me, was, "This is my cousin," and I never forgot that. But they were like first introduced as cousins, and then like a year later, they were dating, and I had to ask, "What you first said cousins?" They're like, "Oh, we thought we were cousins, but we're not really cousins." It was just a mix up. It was a mix up, but in my mind, cousins is cemented. That shit's planted. It's in there now, and they're happily married and have a couple kids. But I can't let go of the first introduction, and maybe that's on me. Maybe that's the burden I carry, right? Yeah, it's my problem. Definitely my problem.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know about this line. Like, we thought we were cousins, but we're not. Like, that sounds real sus. I'm not gonna lie. Were these Navajo
Right,
people? Because then that would make
right.
it even worse.
It sounds real convenient.
Very convenient. I hope they don't. I hope they don't listen to this podcast. I hope they do. I hope everyone listens to this podcast. If I'm talking about you, I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about somebody else. Just putting that out there.
Hey, you know, everybody knows someone who has a husband.
So that's
All right. You know what, Dallas? Can you also answer the first question that we asked earlier? It was, what are examples of love as resistance in indigenous culture movements, or how are you showing love for the people?
Oh, I love that. I when I first jumped on, I was listening for a while. I wanted to say the first thing that came to mind, right? The first thing that came to mind is actually, it could be contentious, but I'm down to have that to talk about it. Was, I love how I grew up in Minneapolis, Minnesota, Southwest Minnesota, both in Dakota, Ojibwe communities, and the American Indian movement is strong, and I love the love that community has for has and had for AIM. But then also there's all this problems with AIM, but people, there's so much love for the movement, right? For the collective organizing. And my mom and my aunties and my uncles who all grew up in it, who could care less about leadership conversations and really care about like, oh, we were fucking tight. We had there was a common vision for change and collective organizing. And I love that. And so it's really interesting to me. I have that there's a contention when I talk to people who aren't really from where the heartland of AIM is, where they're like, they have a different perspective of AIM, where it's all the bad stuff, which is rightfully, there's a lot of negativity there that needs to be called out. But being grown up in it, in the movement, I'm like, yeah, but I also love our people. And that's what it was, is our people moving and organizing and taking action, shutting shit down. So I think that's something that I just I would point out. I don't want to, I could keep talking, but I feel like I'm been talking a lot. So that's all, I'll just say that much. And I also love, the only thing I'd say is just I love appreciating men and Native men. And I think one aspect of it, actually, there is one thing I would talk about is growing up. Like, I love the men who would show up in the public spaces, that were there consistently, right? There's some problematic men and all of that, but like growing up in Minnesota, Jerry Dearly, who is like the MC in the Twin Cities, but he was every Native event, he was there. There was one of my uncles named Dave Larson, he passed away. He was always there. Like anytime there was like a cultural event, they were there. And just to see that in a public space, and the men that were a constant presence in a life where there was inconsistencies, I think matters a lot. And I talked to a lot of other Native brothers, and it really resonates with a lot of us growing up, of like the men that were there. And oftentimes they were power MCs because that was their job, or they were MCs for funerals and other events. I just want to acknowledge that, like, just the power of just showing up and being consistent in your presence in community means a lot.
Thank you, Dallas. That was a good one.
I do always say, like, showing up is 50% of organizing. Truly, like, just showing up consistently. Like, so much of what happens within the movement, like, it's actually hard to describe it because, I'm a scholar or whatever, and I write history, and trying to capture how something actually feels in the moment is kind of impossible, I think, when it comes to organizing and deep community work. And so, that showing up is another, I think, really profound example of love, for sure. Also, I'm not really interested in the social media version of AIM. That is really popular. It's like it was populated by thousands and thousands of community members, like people who are never their names will never make history books, but people who deeply love like what AIM represents, and even today still very much love what AIM represents, because AIM represents liberation and freedom for our people. It represents a deep love for community, and I think it's inaccurate, and it's historically also just inaccurate to claim that it was otherwise, or to only focus on the problems of it. It's so much more complex than that. So yeah, I just wanted to say that. Thanks for that.
I also wanted to add to what Dallas was saying. Like, earnestly, I really appreciate so many of the Native men that I've had an opportunity to get to know and to meet in both organizing and in, my line of work. I interact with a lot of queer Native men and, two-spirit male identifying folks, and a lot of, I think that's something that I think is if I were to, look at organizing through a colonial lens, I think there's a lot of, and it's especially when we do sort of look back at like AIM, we have a tendency to see a lot of the men who were leaders, and we sort of are a lot of times participating in the erasure of the women organizers in AIM. And I want to say, like, I'm so grateful to men or male identifying folks in our communities who really like are followers, like follow a movement and follow the leadership of really organized women and women identifying folks. Like, I think it's just like such a blessing that we are in a place, I think, socially and culturally right now where it's not it's like I feel like we are really close to celebrating women in leadership positions, and celebrating like the inherent leadership that women have, and that women are really good organizers and like really, really powerful community organizers. So I do want to echo like men who sort of like give women space and like show up and are able to sort of like allow women to hold leadership positions and are respectful toward women who hold leadership positions. And like that is such a honorable masculine way to be in the world. It's like it's such a blessing to have men at our back and who are like vocally at our backs saying like these incredible women organizers are doing such a good job to like give the mic to women and like hold space for us in a visible way is like such, to me, that is like, that shit gives me a boner.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Yep. I All right, I thought you were gonna say something. I didn't have anything to respond except like that gives me a boner too, fam. I'm just thinking of all of the good men in my life as y'all are talking about this. I'm thinking of my uncle, thinking of my grandpa, thinking of comrades of the Red Nation. I'm thinking of Kyan. He always helps me out with everything in Red Media and Red Media work. Like I appreciate these sentiments. I know we only have Jana until the top of the hour, so I actually wanted to give you. We had a question from one of our patrons on Patreon, one of our supporters, Annie. She says, I would love to hear how it was for Jana to be in both Rutherford Falls and Res Dogs, given that Res Dogs was speaking to a native audience and Rutherford was speaking to a white audience. And then she says, I loved her in both of those roles. So, how was it, that experience?
Well, it was the honor and privilege of my life to do both of those shows. I will challenge this question a little bit. I don't necessarily think Rutherford Falls is just for a wide audience. I think that Rutherford, I have a lot of folks who are Native, specifically Native women. Not a lot of men come out of the woodwork to say they like Rutherford Falls, because I think it was because it has a female lead. Myself, uh, coexisting with Ed Helms, a white man. I think the first season is a little bit, sort of Native 101, but season 2 is much more like land back vibes. And I think it was so fun. It was so fun to work with people both who are really experienced in television and who are not experienced in television, myself included. I've been doing comedy for the better part of my life, my adult life, my entire adult life. I've been doing comedy my entire adult life, and I think it's just like the ability to sort of like work with people who are super down to just like put people on screen who wouldn't otherwise get an opportunity to. So yeah, it was like super fun. I got to do my thing. My favorite thing about performing is doing different characters. So the character that I got to do on Rutherford was much more close to who I am, like me as Jana. And then, Bev on Reservation Dogs is like, I'm sort of like got to embody all my aunties and my unchies and sort of really go there and, the more they let me, the more I would take, you know? So it was just like, and it was so fun collaborating with like the writers and the producers on that show are all my friends too. And a lot of them worked on Rutherford as well. So, yeah, I think, and it was fun to work with Dallas. I got to work with Dallas on both of those too. And I don't know where he went. His Wi-Fi dropped out in the car, his car Wi-Fi. Oh, he back. Yeah, it was so fun to work with him on both shows, you know, also two very different characters, for him on the shows. And I will say that like in reference to like the image that we used for this very call, it's Dallas and I in a scene on Rutherford. We do play a, like two basic culture, two Native Cultural Center curators who are very annoyed by each other because they're kind of competitive. They're kind of like, you know, they're like, who's the better cultural center executive organizer, and sort of like eventually they fall in love. But the co-creator and producer of Rutherford Falls, Sierra Teller Ornelas, and our friend Tazba Chavez, who was a writer-producer on Rutherford and on Res Dogs, they this episode where our characters first sort of like they have a kiss moment and they like sort of it's like their romance is sealed. That was the first time on television that two Native characters had a like sort of a clean, non-messy, romantic scene together. Yeah, like all of the other sort of romances that we've seen on screen are like either under the influence or like through the prison. Like, you know, it's just like we've seen, you know, like Kevin, we've seen like, you know, grumpy. I feel like even in like Smoke Signals, it's kind of like they're separated, you know, it's just like messy. And this was the first time that we've seen like an actual rom-com moment between Native people, and so they were really excited about that. They were like crying behind the camera, being like, this is the first time that we've ever done this. And you know, it was just like really it was really cool to like get to work with a bunch of Native people around developing that love story. And so yeah. And then, you know, to go over to Res Dogs and to get to play a huge, you know, a huge slut in her 40s was the fucking honor of my life. And I want to do it more. And I wish both shows had gone on to make more seasons. But I guess, you know, we're out here trying to make more stuff and make more comedy. And if Daddy Bezos will allow us, maybe we can. But who knows? But thank you so much for watching the shows, and I just love our audience of Native people. I'll say this one thing about Rutherford before I have to go is every time I go to art market in Santa Fe, or anytime I go to any art market, it's like I get stopped by so many men who are like, hey, yeah, you want to share a piece of gum? And then I get stopped by women who are like of my age or you know, whatever, and they're like, I loved you on Rutherford Falls. I love Regan. Regan is me, you know. And then their husbands or their boyfriends will be like, yeah, my wife made me watch Rutherford Falls, and like, you were pretty funny. Like men don't watch Rutherford Falls, but then I guess through their girlfriends they watch it and they're like, wow, I actually liked it. So anyway, this is just a message to these men out here who are like too fucking sacred to watch a comedy, a Peacock comedy. Like, get on it. It's actually very funny. There, you'll see a lot of your like favorites in that show as well. And like, yeah, it's just it was a joy.
Aw, thank you for that. I'm actually wondering what the RPH response is. Oh, go ahead, Dallas.
Before Jana goes, I have to say, Jana is amazing on set, and I was so nervous because Rutherford Falls, it's a genre type. It's a specific genre type where it's sitcom-y. It's like certain types of jokes. You have to have a certain type of like energy to it that I was not used to at all. And to watch Jana like turn that on and like land it so well, it was like I was like, God damn, that's an actress right over there. That shit was fucking cool.
I love you, brother.
And
Thank you so much. That's
because
nice.
it's you don't realize like there's so many different genres and different styles and approaches, and you have to understand that going into it. And I learned so much from Jana and all the other women on the crew, with Tasba's helping, Sierra like really helping us lock in the characters, but also just learning so much from them. It was pretty amazing to be a part of. But yeah, props to Jana, and then also the character and seeing her on set on Rutherford was also amazing as well. Like, yeah, it's fantastic to watch her do her amazing talents on screen.
Aw, thank you. I know we only have Jana. We're right at the hour. I know you're a busy lady. I'm for the rest of us. I think we can continue to let this bleed out past the hour and just finish it off. But yeah. Did anyone else have anything to say to Jana before she heads out?
Just thank you, Jana. Rutherford Falls, that's my family background, like Reagan. So I appreciated the show. I thought the romance between you and Dallas was beautiful. And thank you for everything you're doing. Thank you for your community work. Thank you for caring. Thank you for making us laugh. Thank you for being awesome. And thank you for having a cat.
Oh, yes. Thank you, Jana. Thank you for giving me permission to switch to white men. I'm just kidding. Oh, she's an awesome guest.
Did she leave yet? Is she gone? Is she gone?
She is out the building.
I forgot to say one thing that was it's related to Rutherford, but that was my first on-screen kiss, like kissing, like it was first time like doing like, yeah. And so I was so nervous and very uncomfortable, to be absolutely frank. So I actually requested like I don't feel comfortable kissing. Like I just don't feel like that. I just can't do it. Like I have so much discomfort about it. And both Tasba, who was the director, and Jana and them were so supportive of that. And like, oh, okay, like let's figure this out. And so that's why on screen, if you rewatch our kiss, we don't actually kiss. It pulls away. And we had an intimacy coordinator on set that I worked with a lot, and we worked with through that whole scene. And it was a big thing for me. I'm like, hey, I don't feel comfortable actually kissing, but we'll figure it out. Can we make this work? And they were like, yeah, like let's figure this out and see how we can make this happen. And I really, really appreciated that. And so we did it artistically. If you watch it again, you'll see that.
Ooh, fun fact. That's cool. I like to hear those kinds of things about behind the scenes.
Yeah, it was like because it was coming right after like sets started having intimacy coordinators and became normalized, right? And just so folks don't know, it had to be normalized. It had to be brought up because of the Me Too movement and so many men who took advantage of women and femme actresses. And now it's a standard part of film sets where you have an intimacy coordinator who's the go-to person in between to make sure all parties are consenting, all parties know what's going to happen, and everything is extremely choreographed out so that there's no surprises whatsoever. And also they are an advocate on your behalf if you have any issues or concerns. So it was really cool to see that in practice and also to have that option for me. And I felt like, to be honest, it was like some folks, it was new because they're like, we didn't expect a man to bring it up to initiate that. But hey, we're here. This is what we're here for. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I really appreciate kind of like the wholesome tone that we entered into talking about this. I had no idea, because Elena and I review a lot of the TV and film about Native people, but also the stuff that Native people are doing, including, I mean, you and Jana Dallas are at the center of this renaissance. You're part of a cadre, a very historic movement, I would say, of the presence of Native people in mainstream film and television, at least in the United States. And so we're always watching it. We're very interested in it. And I didn't realize that non-kiss, right, between the two of you in Rutherford Falls is the first time you see just like a normal romantic comedy moment between Native people on screen. And that's really sad that didn't happen until then. But also that it's been such a pleasure, I think, to see all of this unfolding, to see Native people like taking the reins and at the helm of what Elena and I have talked about multiple times, this very historical development. It's not really even so much in the representation of Native people. It's just like Native people being able to tell stories on a platform that they haven't really had, I would say, with the same kind of consistency or elevation or funding that we have in the past. And so, yeah, just wanted to have a moment of deep appreciation for all of the folks who are involved in that, both in front of the screen and behind the screen, especially the writing. But definitely you and Jana being, I don't know, like, I think all of Indian country's favorites to watch. I think Indian country really loves both of you, truly, because you're funny. You have such a good sense of humor, but there's like a groundedness to you that I think there's like a realness, if I can say that feels really like you make us proud, kind of. And yeah, and I think that's why people come back and want to watch. I mean, people I think also like it when you don't have your shirt on and shit like that. But that's why you were voted second, whatever, by Indian Country TV or whatever. But I'm not gonna objectify you because that's fucked up. I'm just saying, like, yeah, no, I think it's because you carry a lot. You carry a lot for our people every time you appear on screen and things. And I can imagine that that's a really intense responsibility to have. And you do it really well. And you do it really well consistently. And I feel like with integrity. And that is deeply, deeply appreciated. And I feel the same way about Jana.
I appreciate that. I don't know what to say. I appreciate it as the fullest. Yes, Indian country loves the man nips. They love Indian nips when they're out. Free the nips. The no, I really do. I think I want it's a pivot because one, I'm kind of like awkwardly carrying that, so I appreciate that. I want to acknowledge that. Thank you for those kind words. But also we see that come up also in Reservation Dogs. I want to point out the episode where Cheese goes fishing with the uncles, and there's basically they have a therapy session, and we were very intentional through that whole series and that last season. And I don't know if it lands well, but the whole thing was we spend so much time in Indian country talking about this narrative of the old teaching the young, but then there's also it's a conversation that's happening both ways. So what are the young teaching the old? And that was that episode of how does Cheese carry the weight of what has been of trauma that's been passed down to him, but also the methodology, the way Cheese us as younger people are processing that. What can older generations learn from that? And I think that's a really very unique perspective that can only come from people who live within community, right? Who have that lived experience of all right, this is a dynamic that's very much real of the conversation is constant and ever flowing both ways between generations. And I really am grateful to have been have been a part of that, but also be a part of this kind of this ongoing renaissance. And yeah, I feel for me as an actor or just as a person, I always felt the greatest, the utmost importance was for me to be grounded in community, to know, to feel like I'm an active part of community and not to be above it or separate from it. And I'm very proud to have grown up in an amazing place as, being Dakota and Ojibwe, but being Dakota and Navajo, but growing up among Ojibways and growing up in Minnesota. It's a unique, I think it's a special experience that I really do cherish a lot. So thank you very much for those kind words.
Yeah, like I also exactly what Melanie said, and we talked a lot about that episode when we did the Res Dogs review. But what was so cool was to see all of those guys in that episode, like the OG native actors, and these are people that, when you go to a theater and you're watching a movie, you're like, oh yeah, I know that guy. We know Wes Studi, he's been around for a long time. We know Gary Farmer's been around for a long time, and now there's Dallas Goldtooth, and there's John McLaren, who's been around for a long time. But just to see all those four guys, and Cheese, and just how it was handled with such a humorous touch. I was crying and laughing at the same time because it was just so beautifully done. And it was just, it was a thank you for telling the stories. Thank you for telling the stories, but thank you for telling them the way that you do. Because it's important that the stories are told. It's also important that they're told well and told right. So grateful for you. Thankful for you.
Yeah, and that episode in particular, but I think Res Dogs, because you're right, like Rutherford Falls is like a very sitcom-y thing. It's a very like Peacock kind of show, which is I loved Jana in it and I loved the native presence, but I just didn't like it as much. I was going to talk about this, but Jana left. I didn't like it as much as Res Dogs because it just has a very different format, right? But I feel like Res Dogs was just like vignettes, like each episode was a short story essentially, but with very like real life scenarios. And because it was like almost all native people, it had a very different, what did I call it? It felt like indigenous world making is how Res Dogs felt. Rutherford Falls definitely didn't feel that way. And that's why I really loved the latter, or the former. But that episode that you're referencing where Cheese is like going fishing with all the uncles, there's also this thing that happens in Res Dogs that you never see either, which is like positive masculinity, like for like native men and native male actors actually being allowed to engage in a spectrum of emotions. Like Wes Studi never got to have emotion on camera ever before Reservation Dogs, right? And so you see these very like venerated actors, these people who've been in the industry for 30 years, who've literally just been silent and like glare. They're just expected to be silent and glaring. And so I think that's also I just really appreciated with Reservation Dogs, like that there was just an openness about gender expression that you also really don't get to see unless probably there's like native people writing those characters and just like the realness of native people embodying those characters. Because they're not really characters. That's what Reservation Dogs like was funny because they were definitely characters and kind of like unusual scenarios or spectacular scenarios, but there was so much of it that felt so real. Like that's me, or like that's my friend, or like that's my family. Those are people I know. They almost felt like relatives instead of characters, and that has never, ever, ever happened in the history of American television and film. So, yes, I think Reservation Dogs in particular, is like so important for that.
Yeah, I feel like kind of connecting it to this conversation this day and conversation around love. I think that there's obviously I feel like there is a need for me. I feel as a man, speaking from my perspective, like there's a need to continue to cultivate language of love for masculinity, a healthy form of masculinity within our communities, and to like promote that. And you're spot on. Like I remember my first like biggish acting gig was actually on Drunk History on Comedy Central, where I played John Trudell, and I got that gig because of Zahn McLaren was already booked for it, and they were like, Zahn was like really fucking uncomfortable. He texted me, he's like, dude, I don't know how to feel about this Drunk History, and I'm like, oh dude, you're fine, it's great. He's never saw the show, so I was like, oh, you're great, you're not actually drunk. Like it's just someone's retelling them and you're just lip singing, talking, whatever. And he got them to hire me. He was like, dude, you should get Dallas. to do John Trudell. Like, get him to be, because he's got the organizing background and he can do it and he's funny. And I remember talking to Zahn while we were filming it, where Zahn, who's been doing this for fucking 20 some 30 years, he was like uncomfortable because he never got to do comedy on screen, something funny and lighthearted. Because like you're saying, he always plays the angry Indian, the dark, the stoic guy, and like to have an ability to play something else was like kind of terrifying. He was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm like, dude, you're freaking great. Like, just lean into it. And the same goes, like, I've had the same conversation with Wes Studi and Gary Farmer. Like, those, like, it's just, I guess it's very reflective of the circumstance of our current situation in society. As we as men, the capacity to respond to the world is often limited because of how we define masculinity in such tight ways that we're not allowed to access the full breadth of our emotional capacity, right? We're not allowed to respond to the world with sadness or with tears or with laughter. And so to see that on screen and to give more options for Native actors, I think is so powerful for us as performers, but also for the viewers and those that see it. To see that on camera, I think is so much more than I think people really understand. And that's what I'm hearing from you all, is like reinforcing that. And I think that's what we need to continue to see. Cause like, yeah, like I don't know what other, like, dude, my comedy, our laughter, all that's how I'm processing masculinity, is like making fun and teasing all these uncles that I grew up with because they're absurd. And that's how I express the love for the absurdity of masculinity at times, is by teasing it and making fun of it. And that's me interrogating it. I feel like I threw out a bunch of big words all together, and I don't know if it made sense.
It made sense, and it was
made
fabulous.
sense.
Yeah.
I do that I'm an academic. I do that all the time. I followed everything you said. It was good.
There's a video I made long time. This is before, actually, I think it was before 1491. So I did a YouTube video called Native Love. It still floats out there every now and then. I filmed it in Minneapolis, and it was just basically a love poem. And I just went and had different men hold up signs, and it was like I think it was a ripoff of like a Bob Dylan music video, I think, or something like that. But it was just like, I'm fascinated. I've always been fascinated. I always promote for us as communities to allow us to express masculinity in such different ways that it's uncomfortable but needed. And I think that's essential for us to continue to promote that, and especially within our community, I guess amongst men, promoting that. And I feel like we have grown a lot, and I think I'm really grateful. So I guess I'm housing this within that, like, Valentine's Day and love, and like continuing my journey of what I said already. I love men, Native men, and I love us for all our flaws and all our strengths, and I want to continue to cultivate that. So yeah, I think that was, I'm doubting myself now. I'm like, that was very tangential, but we're good.
So, Justine, you had, I don't know how much longer we should go, but one of your questions, sorry, I'm taking over your host role, but we're vibing. But one of the last questions was, what are some forms of decolonial love that you can list or express? And, it's interesting, Dallas, full disclosure, I would never center men in a podcast. I was hosting. And I'm a feminist, right? People probably know this about me very well. I'm an Indigenous feminist. And that doesn't mean anti-men, but it certainly means like fuck heteropatriarchy. It certainly means that. And I'm like not interested in centering that ever. And this particular holiday is really just about reinforcing heteropatriarchy and heteronormativity, but in a way that is not decolonial at all. It's about reinforcing colonial gender norms, the gender binary, the fact that colonialism required the denigration of women and the devaluation of our like LGBTQ2 relatives. And then of course, like the forcing men, Native men, into the institution and the system of heteropatriarchy, and just the remarkable damage that that has done to our people and to our communities, and the remarkable violence that comes from heteropatriarchy, uh, and that men often, Native men often inhabit this. They enact a lot of violence in our communities for sure. But there is, what I'm trying to say is that for me, like I actually do appreciate this conversation that you opened up about masculinity and Native men, and you saying I love Native men. I I would never say that, but the way that you're saying it is making me kind of rethink what like a indigenous feminist position would be on masculinity or on Native men, because you're not saying it, from what I can tell, you're not saying it from like that creepy heteropatriarchy place, or where like, I don't know, men just kind of like circle around and justify like the fucked up things that they do, whether it's to women or in our communities and stuff. But actually, that like paying attention to decolonizing masculinity, I guess, for lack of a better way of saying it, is a really central aspect of decolonial love. And in that sense, I really appreciate it. Uh, yeah, I just really appreciate it. We don't, on RPH, we call it kind of like Native Women Freestyle. It's kind of how Elena and I roll on RPH. So having like a man, having a man in our midst, having a Native man in our midst, but you're like a wholesome Native man, but you're also like very, because you grew up in the movement and you do a lot of movement work, you're aware. Like I think you have a good critique of gender, I guess is what I'm saying. And also your own position as a man. And so what better man in our midst than Dallas to talk about this? I do appreciate it.
For someone that doesn't want
Go
to
ahead.
decenter
I'm
men,
done.
you just said man like 5 bajillion times just now. No, no, I get that. I appreciate it, and I feel like that maybe as an excuse. I don't know what it is, but like that's that's the load I carry in this process of decolonization. Right? Is how do I pull in men? How do I check masculinity amongst my peers? That's my job. That's the task I have to carry, and along with many other tasks, but that's my responsibility. So I guess that's why it is a priority for me, and I bring it up in a very, try to, from a decolonial lens as much as possible, and very much respect where like everyone else is like, we don't want to center that, and for me, just because of my identity and my relationships, it is a priority for me. But I definitely identify as a feminist. I see myself as a Dakota feminist, and fully believe in that. So yeah, it's just like I can't help, like when like I saw the prompts about like expressions of love, like, and maybe it's just in this moment right now, even like it's different too. I'm on a journey as being a father, like that all plays into like everything. So yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you. And yeah, I know that we're dragging it on, but I'm okay to pivot. But that is, thanks for the acknowledgement on where we are at as a community and what needs to be done.
Aw, thank you. That was really wholesome back and forth, y'all. I couldn't have planned any of that in a better way. And I think it really is important to talk about like decolonial masculinity and like within our feminist movements. I think this will be very useful for the show. But yeah, we're coming up almost on like on an hour and a half. I think it's appropriate to call it about around now. But wondering if y'all have any closing thoughts and any messages for our listeners. And I don't know, how would you like to close out this Valentine's episode?
I don't want the final words. Obviously, like I want to say acknowledge my lovely wife, who is currently like caring for our children and in the massive consumer capital that has Mall of America right over here. And so I definitely look forward to getting back over there. So I want to acknowledge my lovely wife, who keeps me checked and balanced and helps see with a perspective on the world that I so appreciate. And just thank you all. I think this podcast, I'm a fan of this podcast. I'm a fan of all the work that Red Nation does. And I think it's a much needed voice and voices that needs to be a part of it. So continue to encourage people to follow all the work that is being done out of this space and the amazing people here. And we are, that's all I gotta say. Like, we continue to move ahead, and power lies in the collective, power lies in mass mobilizations, and all of us to have a greater class consciousness for a better world. So appreciate you all.
Thanks, Dallas. I'll follow up with what Jana said about having men, standing behind and being active voices. My husband's Dene, and he is always reminding the world that he came from a matriarchy and that whatever I say goes. So he's one of those good ones. Justine, they're out there. I'm telling you, you can do whatever you want, but there are decent Native men, and yeah, there are decent Native men who stand behind women, push them forward, say, listen to her, let her talk. And happy Valentine's Day to everyone. And remember, we're celebrating the Kanaka Maoli and their assassination of Cook. And chocolate, which also is indigenous.
True.
So
it's like an indigenous cuisine day. I just wanted to say one last thing. I made a comment earlier about how I don't think much about romantic love or like individual love anymore. I think about it in the register of the collective. And that doesn't mean that folks who are listening, or me as a person, me as like a Native woman, it doesn't mean that we don't deserve love. Like, it doesn't mean that we don't deserve partnership, the love we have with our families, right? And, the life expectancy after COVID for Native people dropped by 7 years. We're not supposed to be around for a long time. We're certainly not supposed to be people who, within like a colonial system, are allowed to have love, are allowed to have care, who are allowed to be healthy, people. And so not on just this one day, but just to encourage, people, especially all of our Native listeners out there, that, like, you do deserve love, and that even that kind of love you might have with a partner, the love we have for ourselves, that's also really powerful. And like, we should really love ourselves, because that's the basis of our power and our self-reliance and our strength, I guess. And so everyone deserves love, I guess is what I'm saying. And everyone deserves care. And I genuinely hope that everyone listening has that in their life, because it's just, we all deserve that basic dignity, especially Native people who have been denied it systematically.
Well, thank you, comrades, and thank you for saying that, Elena, because ultimately my pursuit of romantic love is in the spirit of love for my family, love for my bear clan, love for future generations, of which I hope we can, create. And I appreciate this conversation really, for people who are looking for decolonial ways to love, loving their people, loving their family, loving their communities. And thank you so much for this conversation on this day. And thank you, RPH, for coming through. And thank you, Dallas. Thank you, Jana. Again, if you love the live stream, if you love the show, please support our work on GoFundMe. You can become a Patreon subscriber where you can submit questions whenever we have a live stream. But this was a really fun episode on a really fun day. Kuntalaha to our Kanaka Malay relatives and our Mapuche relatives for putting the resistance into Valentine's Day. But this is Justine Teba reminding you to help control the pet population. Have your pets spayed or neutered. Goodbye, everybody.